All right, everyone. So today we are going to walk through a full end-to-end flow of a professional services firm and what those operations look like inside of HubSpot, specifically around what objects are used when those transitions occur and the use cases behind each one. So we're actually going to map this out live here on this whiteboard inside of ClickUp. And it's basically just going to be a freestyle. That's why I wore my fun Hawaiian shirt, because we're just going to jam today. It's not actually why, but we'll have fun here and say that it is. So we're going to actually walk through from start to finish, starting with people coming in to your account, how that looks in HubSpot in terms of the information flow. And then we're going to go all the way through to onboarding and the servicing of the customer and how that loops back around into other objects. So we'll probably just map this out as linear as we can to make it easier to understand. In reality, there's lots of loops and interconnected pieces to it. But this is going to be current as of June of 2026. If you are watching this after that time, there's no promises that things haven't changed, because HubSpot's releasing a lot of new features, a lot of new hubs, a lot of new objects. And so better solutions could pop up in the future. So that's something to keep in mind. And so we are going to start out with the very front of the funnel. Let's pretend that data comes into HubSpot. And so there's two ways that data can come into HubSpot. I'm going to put in two shapes here. We're going to have contacts, and let me switch this font because that looks like kindergarten class. So we have contacts, and then we have companies. So those are the two objects that are typically created, one or the other or both, whether it's a form submission, an integration, or anything else. And so this is the main object that we're going to use or the main objects we're going to use to tie to other objects inside of the system. But usually what happens if you're a professional service firm, a consultancy, an agency, an accounting firm, whatever it may be in the professional services industry, then what's going to happen is after these contacts or companies are created, these are going to then automatically create a lead. And so now we have a lead object. And the old way of doing this was actually using a contact or using a company and doing everything through that, using the lead status and the lifecycle stages. But the leads object gives sales a very good way to work leads, because you can create multiple leads for a contact or a company. And so just to give an example of this, when it comes to something like a marketing agency, let's say you have a one-off website build project. You create a lead for that initial one. You pursue the lead. Best case, you win it. You'll end up creating a deal, which is what we'll go through later here. But ultimately, what might happen is you then want to actually speak about some type of expansion opportunity, whether it's an additional project, whether it's maintenance for the website, whether it's SEO, if that wasn't sold on the original deal. And so what you'll do is you'll actually create another lead tied to the same contact and the same company as before, but specifically for pursuing that different opportunity. So it's like a pre-deal record here. And so that's why leads are a little different. You can't create multiple contacts or multiple companies for one person or one account. It's not good practice. And you wouldn't want to track pre-deal type conversations through these objects. So instead you create a lead and tie it back associated to the contact or company. And so there's more benefits to this approach too. The sales workspace as a whole benefits leads and deals primarily as the way that salespeople work through things. Same with the customer success workspace. Does mostly deals actually. So that's more when it's further in the process. But either way, that's the purpose of using leads. So you go contact a company, you associate and automatically create a lead when it's inbound and meets certain criteria. Or if it's an expansion opportunity, or maybe you're going to pursue that person a year down the line. So maybe a contact says it's not good timing right now. We just closed up budget and we want to reevaluate next year. You close that lead as lost so that it gets off your board, but you would automatically create a new lead that will be created 12 months down the line to follow up on that opportunity. And so it just keeps everything cleaner. It's easier to operate. It's easier to see what you have to work throughout the day rather than having to sort through contacts and companies. Now, after that, let's say a lead goes through the process. HubSpot will automatically move it between certain lead stages in the pipeline. But let's say it's a qualified lead. We recognize that there's an opportunity to do business. they're qualified. We've talked to them on the phone or via email, and they're interested in our services. And we've done whatever pre-qualification work we need to do. We move them to qualifying. HubSpot will automatically pop up a form, and then that will require us to fill out information that will then create a deal. So basically, this is the path where leads ends and a deal begins. And so the beautiful part is that once you do that, the deal will be tied to the contact and the company automatically. So it's all still going to be tied back to those contact and company records, and all of that data is going to be preserved. All the calls, all the emails, all the notes that you put on the lead, put on those other objects will still be able to be viewed in the deal itself. And so now that we have the deal, we're working the deal through the sales process. This means it's a real opportunity to do business. We're going to do our typical motion, whatever that may be, whether it's qualifying the prospect, booking a demo call, getting the proposal out, all those typical steps that are taken. You will do that through the deal pipeline because the lead has been closed out. It was moved into the qualified stage, which is the outcome that we wanted. And so now we're doing everything else associated with a deal. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop some other boxes up here. I'm going to change the color on this just so it stands out a little bit. So while we're moving the deal through the pipeline, we're going to have different HubSpot objects layered in here. And so there will be quotes in here. And let's do this. Let's actually do wider deal. So there will be quotes going on. In those quotes and in the deal, you'll have products which turn into line items. So there's a product library, and then when they get added to a deal or deal and a quote, then they turn into line items, which are basically like copies of the product just for that specific deal or quote. So that allows you to just modify some things, but you're still taking the standardized information over there. With quotes now, there's tons of ways in HubSpot with their new releases to generate these quotes based off of rules, based off of a bunch of other like AI features and stuff. So this is getting pretty capable. And then once you win that, so let's put this over here, turn it into green. There's a few objects as of now that come into play. So you win the quote, it's signed. If you are paying through HubSpot, a few things happen. You'll have subscriptions pop up. Obviously, it'll automatically create invoices for each of those payments that come through on the subscription, or if it's a one-time payment, you'll have the invoices created as well. This also can be synced over from other tools like QuickBooks or NetSuite or whatever other integration that you have that would be creating invoices in the first place. And then the other thing that's brand new and a very, very important part of this process are contracts. And contracts are the most exciting thing to happen to nerds like myself, because this makes HubSpot really easy to use. So basically what happens is a contract is created to track your recurring revenue, the line item details. So if it's a mix of fixed price line items like project-based ones, and then also recurring line items, then that will all be put into the contract. The MRR will be tracked along with the total contract value, and all that data will be there and separated and continuously tracked so that you don't have to look at deals and create some weird workaround where you're creating renewal deals just for tracking purposes of your MRR, for example. So contracts make this a lot easier because, as you know, if you're a professional services firm, a lot of the times with your subscription type offerings, you'll run into situations where people downgrade, people upgrade, people remove certain line items, people churn entirely. And so contracts allows you to proactively handle that and then track all that information automatically so you don't have this mess in the tool. So basically in a contract, you can go to the contract after the deal is closed won. You can click on a button and create a change order for it where you can change specific line items. You can change pricing, quantity, the line items that are on there. You can strike out certain ones. You can add certain ones. It will create a new quote. So it'll bring you back here. And then you can either tie it to the same deal that you were working before, or you can create a brand new deal to track the status of that. So especially when it comes to like an upsell type opportunity or an expansion, maybe you want to track that as a separate deal from the original one. And so you can do that then through the contracts. It's all in there. And then when you have that quote sent out and it's signed, the contracts object automatically tracks all that. So it'll update all the dates and all the data around your MRR, your TCV, and everything else. It gets tied all back to the contacts and the companies over here. And so it's this one ecosystem that you can do end to end here. So this is newer. It's in beta right now, but HubSpot is truly putting together a full process here. And so now we're done with the sales side of things. So now we can move on to the other part, which is actually servicing the client. And even before that, onboarding them. So in HubSpot, this is a part that has changed a lot recently as well. Basically, before a lot of people would use tickets for this type of deal, for this type of, shouldn't use that word. They would use tickets for onboarding and tracking projects, but there are now options. Tickets are still a viable way. So you can do tickets for onboarding. You can have a pipeline for onboarding. You can have a pipeline for support. You can have a pipeline for specific steps in your actual onboarding process and your project execution. But there are now additional parts to HubSpot, additional objects that you can use instead. So you can throw services in there. Services are meant to capture more of what professional services firms would typically execute on, I would say. So it's a little bit more catered to actual services rather than tickets, which was built originally as a support type function. So this is now a more traditional setup where tickets are truly meant for customer support, and then services are truly meant to track actual services that are delivered, including onboarding processes. So in HubSpot, you have the deal close one. You can automatically create a services record or a ticket, tie that back to the deal, tie that back to the contact in the company, assign out your CS team to work and use that service record, log all their activity through there, and just go on their way. And then the beautiful part of having all of this together is now all those meetings, all those calls, all those emails for the actual servicing side gets sent back to HubSpot. And so now you can use this for expansion and other sales type activities along with customer health. So tons of customer health features being built in. And so this is just a huge use case. And so it doesn't stop there, because now you're saying, okay, high level, we're tracking our services and the stages that the service is in. Well, I also have to execute on my actual project, and maybe you don't have an external PM tool. It varies, honestly. Some people do spreadsheets. We do ClickUp. Obviously, some people do Asana or Monday or any of these other tools. So that's still a viable option. But let's say you wanted to keep everything inside of HubSpot so that you truly just have one platform subscription there and people aren't working out of multiple systems in their day. So what you can do on top of that is then tied to the services object primarily, but also to tickets. We'll do a little nice little line right here. What you can have is a project in HubSpot. Projects. So now we're end to end. We're actually delivering on everything. And so the project object in HubSpot is relatively new. It allows you to, I'd say, do project management light in it. If you keep everything planned in a way where you can fit it in a Gantt chart, you don't need true blocks in there with like associated tasks and stuff like that, but you're just going to plan it out in terms of a Gantt chart, major milestone, subtasks, and stuff like that. You can do it all in HubSpot. You can automatically create all of this stuff once the onboarding process happens, and then people can actually run their project out of HubSpot. So this is getting built on. It's not a fully fledged solution. It'll never replace something like ClickUp or Asana or Jira or any of those other tools, but it is something that is lightweight and will fit people who have very well-defined services so that you can just keep everything simple and inside of HubSpot here. Now, I'm going to zoom back out so you can see the whole chart here. This is just a very high level run through in a linear way of how a flow would work beginning to end. You have the information come in, a lead is created, it's qualified, a deal is created, you add line items to the deal, you create a quote, the quote is won, it generates subscriptions, invoices, or contracts, or all of them. Then you have an onboarding ticket or an onboarding service, you have your ongoing services records or your ongoing tickets records. And then you have your project for actual execution and task assignment. So you have this linear process that we've mapped out. Obviously, it's not linear, it's all tied together. And the beautiful part is that when someone in CS is working on their services and they have a call with a client and they recognize an upsell opportunity, or if you're part of like a platform, a cross sell opportunity to another portfolio, they can actually just go in HubSpot and create the deal and tie it back to all the other records. And so now either themselves or the sales team can work on that deal. Everything is tied into the system. And then just to add another factor to this, if you use an ERP, you can also start syncing over everything based off of this structure here. Obviously, you have to do like a pretty deep mapping between the different NetSuite. I say NetSuite because we've been working on a NetSuite project recently. All the ERP objects overall and how they sync to either line items or deals or companies or contacts or whatever objects. It could be a custom object as well. You can sync everything. You can keep everything up to date. So you get the full picture of your entire client lifecycle inside of HubSpot. So I just want to create this video because it's something we talk about a lot with clients, trying to wrap our heads around this exact process from beginning to end of this is where it starts. This is how it transitions from one step to another for your entire customer journey. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this shows, especially if you're a professional services firm, exactly how this flow can work from beginning to end. Obviously, when we're actually working with clients, we're mapping this out in explicit detail, going over roles, going over the actual handoffs and when that happens, going over the actual qualification steps, how you're capturing and quoting things, what your upsell and expansion process looks like, how you track customer health, how you do your project management. Everything gets considered here so you can simplify things. You can unify the team across definitions and across the whole process. And it's all documented for you so people can reference that when they're onboarding or when you're just a human being and it's been a few months and you want to go look at it, right? So overall, this is what we see day to day. This is what we talk about a lot, especially with the leads being introduced, especially with contracts, especially with services, especially with projects. This is all stuff that is critical to understand if you're going to be a very powerful user of HubSpot and understanding the business model and how it fits into your data model. And so if you're an agency or consultancy doing over $10 million a year in revenue, and this entire conversation was relevant to you because you recognize gaps in your own process or want something simpler that your team can operate out of effectively, that you can get effective and accurate numbers out of to actually run an organization, then reach out on our website in the video description below, and we'd be happy to chat. I'm Dan Savager from Merger Data. Thanks for watching.